You live in Poland, you know it.
Greece has gone to the polls today for the referendum on the country's new bailout programme. I'm joined by Gideon Rachman, the FT's chief foreign affairs commentator, to discuss the implications. Gideon, thank you for joining us. Let's talk a bit about Alexis Tsipras, a man that many people in Brussels seem to have misjudged.
Yeah, I mean, I think that initially when he came in, there was a shock, the far left have won. Then when he first showed up in Brussels, you would hear from diplomats, actually he's not so bad, he's quite reasonable, and there was an initial period of optimism where they thought, okay, we can do a deal with this guy. And now I think everyone's saying, my goodness, what's he done? He's rejected the bailout, he's called this referendum, and his language is increasingly demagogic, talking about blackmail and national humiliation and so on. So I think more or less whatever happens in the referendum, it's going to be very hard for the EU to cut a deal with Tsipras.
I mean, obviously he was elected to end austerity and keep them in the Eurozone in seemingly intractable positions. Do you think the referendum was his admittance that he just couldn't square those two positions?
Well, I think one of the things that's happening is that he's a bit of a mystery. Nobody's quite sure what's in his mind. I mean, some say he's just incompetent, he was inexperienced, he never saw this coming, and this referendum is a kind of last desperate throw of the dice or flashing around. Others say, oh no, it's more Machiavellian than that, because as you say, Greeks seem to want contradictory things. They wanted an end to austerity and they wanted to stay in the euro. That he's known all along that he wants to get them out of the euro, but that's not a popular position here. And so he's kind of maneuvered a situation in which he can achieve that goal and blame it on the foreigners. Now, who knows what the reality is? He still remains a little unclear.
And of course that sort of him banking on the Eurozone not wanting Greece to leave seemed like a good idea 6 months ago. Now the rhetoric's really shifted. I mean, can you talk a bit about that? I mean, it seems like the rest of the Eurozone isn't so scared anymore.
I never thought that was a secure assumption, because if you go around the other European capitals, just as the rhetoric here in Athens has been hardening about national humiliation, and you see all these posters around demonizing the Germans and so on, if you go to Germany, they're very angry too. They say, look, we've shoved all this money towards Greece, they're wasted it, they're calling us Nazis, why should we continue? So there's a lot of anger there, which isn't helpful. And also I think that they worry about the second order effects of allowing Greece to default, of allowing Greece to show that you can reverse austerity policies. There are all these governments around Europe, Portugal, Spain, Ireland, which have done the austerity policies and which have a kind of Syriza party, a far left party, breathing down their necks. So they don't want to see Syriza succeed.
What about in terms of the sort of breakup of this great European project? I mean, the one defining factor of integration was the euro. How much of a worry is it that if Greece leaves, the whole thing sorts to fray at the edges? Do you buy that argument?
Yeah, I do actually. I mean, I think that they should be worrying about it much more, but I think for the reasons I was talking about, the immediate worries about default and about far left parties gaining ground and anger at Greece, and also partly to keep their spirits up in Brussels and Berlin. They're saying, oh no, we can let these guys go, it's not really a problem. But I think if they think it through, it is a problem, because first of all, just on a practical level, you show that the euro is not irreversible. But also more broadly, I think that the great promise the EU made is that once you're in the EU, life is better. You've got political stability, prosperity increases and so on. And here you've got a country that will actually be dumped on its back, that will, where people are in terrible trouble and where the country's in terrible trouble. So what does that say about the broader promise that the EU made?
Of course, and in Poland already, the debate around politics at the moment coming up to the election is all a bit about Greece. It's, look at what's happening to Greece, how can we avoid that? And Poland at some point should join the euro, but they're really pushing back against it. Today, obviously, Greeks are at the polls. It looks too tight to call, but the no vote seems to have a slight lead. I mean, if that happens, is there any chance of renegotiations opening in Brussels? I mean, it seems like Mr. Tusk, President Tusk, is being a bit more soft. Martin Schulz, there seems to be much more hard line. I mean, how do you see it?
I think it's very difficult. I mean, for a mixture of emotional and legal and political reasons, that I think we almost seen a culture clash actually at times where it seemed like last week, or was it even earlier this week, where Tsipras appeared to suddenly reverse and say, okay, I'll take the deal. And then the Germans said, well, hang on, you can't just do that. We've got to have 2 votes in the Bundestag and so on. You've got this very legalistic, follow the rules culture meeting this rather more volatile culture here. And so it's not just a question of them saying, okay, we see the need, we'll do the deal. It's very complicated. You've got to get a whole new bailout package, and that's hard to negotiate. On the other hand, I think that there is if people in Europe really take fright, if they think, my goodness, this country could really fall apart and it'll be on us, maybe they'll do their best to get a deal, but my guess is that the initial reaction will be fine, Greece has voted to let them go.
And of course, after sort of making those noises about a potential deal, he then went on national TV and accused everyone in Brussels of blackmailing the country. Do you think the ultimate end game, though, for the creditors was to get rid of Tsipras, to try and get someone that was more amenable, and that sort of backfired by pushing him too far?
Look, I mean, I think that, I don't know whether it was quite as sort of Machiavellian as that, we've got to get rid of this guy. But I think that basically the European Union can only cope with centre-left or centre-right, with people who are kind of committed to the project. If they've got a sort of fire-breathing lefty or far-right person, they don't really know how to cope. They just have to hope that they change their colours and become like the person that they weren't before. And Tsipras hasn't done that. So, I suppose they would say that they would hope that Tsipras would see reason. But obviously the corollary is if he doesn't, then we've got to wait for somebody else.
Thank you very much, Gideon.
Pleasure.